Imagine waking up tomorrow, and for the next 7 days, all that enters your body are Pringles cans. Breakfast, Pringles. Lunch, Pringles. Dinner, more Pringles. At first, your brain will love it. Salt, fat, the crunchiness, the instant dopamine rush. But what seems like just an innocent snack begins to trigger a chain reaction within your body, almost immediately. In the first few hours, your sugar and insulin levels begin to fluctuate violently. Your body senses that something is wrong, but it still tries to adapt. On the second day, you would probably wake up bloated. His thirst would increase. Your face would start to look different in the mirror. And the strangest part, even after eating thousands of calories, you might start to feel hungrier than ever before. Because your body would be desperately searching for nutrients that simply aren't there. On the third day, something happens to your brain that many people wouldn't expect. His mood would begin to change. Your energy would become unstable. His concentration would drop. And at that point, your body would already be entering a state of constant inflammation. But it's on the fifth that most people would realize something truly terrifying. Because at that point, you probably wouldn't just feel tired. Your body would start sending clear signals of stress. Extreme fluid retention, headaches, slowed bowel, mental fatigue, feeling of heaviness in the body, constant hunger even after eating. And the most impressive thing, all of this can start happening even before you gain much weight. Because the real problem isn't just the fat. It's what happens silently inside your body while you think you're just eating potatoes. Today, we're going to see exactly what would happen to your body, day after day, if you ate only Pringles for 7 days straight. Day 1. The first day would probably seem surprisingly normal. Actually, your brain might even like that. The moment you open your first can of Pringles, your brain receives an extremely powerful combination of salt, refined carbohydrates, fats, and flavor enhancers designed precisely to make you want more. And that's where the first changes begin inside your body. In the first few hours, your blood sugar level rises rapidly. This happens because the body breaks down the ultra-processed carbohydrates in Pringles very quickly, turning everything into glucose almost immediately. Your pancreas reacts by releasing insulin to try to control this sugar spike. At first, you might not even notice anything negative. You might even feel it. Instant pleasure, feeling of reward, fast energy, desire to keep eating. But this effect doesn't last long. A few hours later, comes the first fall. Your blood sugar starts to drop rapidly, and your brain interprets this as hunger again, even after you've already consumed hundreds of calories. That's why many people can eat a whole can of chips and still feel like eating more right after. The problem is that your body received calories, but almost no real nutrients. And while that's happening, something else begins silently. The excess sodium in Pringles causes your body to retain water. By the end of the first day, many people would probably realize thirstier than usual, mild swelling, dry mouth, feeling of heavy body, constant hunger. And that would only be the beginning. Because on the second day, your body would start to realize that something is really wrong. Day 2. On the second day, your body would already begin to enter a state of metabolic stress. Upon waking up, the first thing many people would notice would be swelling. His face might appear fuller. The fingers might appear swollen. And your body would start retaining even more fluid because of the enormous amount of sodium consumed the previous day. But the most interesting thing is that the problem wouldn't just be the salt. Your body would begin to notice a serious lack of essential nutrients. Because even though you're consuming a lot of calories, there are practically not enough of real fibers, important vitamins, minerals, quality proteins. And this starts affecting the brain very quickly. At this point, your energy would likely begin to become unstable. You would experience small bursts of energy shortly after eating Pringles, followed by tiredness, drowsiness, and difficulty concentrating a few hours later. And there's another effect that many people don't expect. His hunger would begin to increase. This seems contradictory, but it makes sense biologically. Your brain understands that you are eating a lot, but at the same time it senses that something is missing. so it continues sending hunger signals in an attempt to find the nutrients the body desperately needs. It's as if your body is saying, keep looking for food. Even after thousands of calories. By the end of the second day, many people would likely begin to feel mental fatigue, constant thirst, difficulty focusing, slower intestine, a strange feeling of hunger without satisfaction, and internally, inflammation in the body would begin to increase. But the third day is when things really start to change. Day 3. On the third day, your body would probably start to really complain. You would wake up feeling heavier, more tired, and maybe even a little mentally strange. And the most curious thing is that, even after eating Pringles all day, the hunger wouldn't completely disappear. This happens because your body is receiving a lot of calories, but almost no nutrients that actually help the body function properly. At this point, the brain begins to notice the lack of protein, vitamins, minerals, and fiber. And this directly affects your energy and mood. You would likely start to find it difficult to concentrate, have less energy, and a strong craving for something fresh or real. It's as if your body is desperately trying to compensate for what's missing. Your intestines would also begin to slow down. Digestion would become heavier, and that bloated feeling would likely increase even more. And while all this is happening, the inflammation inside the body continues to grow silently. But the fourth day is when most people would start to realize that this is actually affecting the entire body. Day 4. By the fourth day, your body would likely be completely exhausted from this type of diet. That initial feeling of pleasure from eating Pringles would begin to disappear because the brain would no longer be receiving the same reward as before. Instead, you would start to feel more fatigue, more irritability, and a constant feeling of a heavy body. At this point, many people would likely wake up feeling unwell, even after sleeping through the night. This happens because the body is already working under constant stress trying to balance blood sugar, fluid retention, and a lack of essential nutrients. Your face might appear more swollen. Thirst would increase even more. And some people might start to experience headaches or that strange feeling of mental sluggishness. What's most striking is that the body begins to enter almost an alert state. It realizes it's receiving energy, but not the kind it really needs to function properly. And that's exactly why, on the fifth day, the effects start to become much harder to ignore. Day 5. By the fifth day, most people would probably start to realize that their body is no longer just uncomfortable. It's trying to fight back. You might wake up feeling sluggish, inflamed, and even a bit drained. That quick energy boost from carbohydrates at the beginning practically disappears, and what's left is a constant feeling of tiredness. At this point, your body would already be extremely deficient in important nutrients. And the brain begins to feel this strongly. Many people would likely notice changes in mood, less patience, and even difficulty thinking clearly. It's as if the entire body is functioning below normal. But perhaps the most frightening sign is something else. Even if you ate all day, you probably wouldn't feel truly satisfied, because the body continues to seek proteins, vitamins, fiber, and minerals that simply aren't getting there. Meanwhile, inflammation and fluid retention continue to silently increase. That's why, on the sixth day, the body starts to enter a much more noticeable level of exhaustion. Day 6. On the sixth day, your body would likely begin to enter a state of true nutritional exhaustion. At this point, many people would already find it difficult to even maintain the same energy for simple daily tasks. The body is still receiving calories, but it begins to function as if it were empty. And there's a reason for that. Almost everything you're consuming in this experiment is ultra-processed. So, while sugar and sodium continue to enter the body all the time, important nutrients remain lacking. Your body is starting to notice this imbalance more and more. You would likely feel thirstier, more bloated, and have a constant feeling of discomfort after eating. And mentally, many people would start to feel that strange sensation of brain fog, as if their brain were functioning more slowly. But perhaps the most impressive part is something else. At this stage, many people would begin to completely lose the pleasure of eating Pringles. The brain no longer receives the same reward as at the beginning, and the food starts to seem repetitive and even nauseating. It's almost as if the body itself is trying to send a warning, "I need real food." And on the seventh day, the effects would likely become impossible to ignore. Day 7. By the seventh day, your body would probably already be completely saturated. At this point, many people would begin to feel a mixture of almost constant physical and mental fatigue. The feeling of bloating would likely be much more noticeable, especially in the face and abdomen, due to fluid retention and the extreme excess of sodium accumulated throughout the week. But perhaps the most worrying thing was the internal feeling. Your body would start to feel out of fuel, even after eating several times a day. This happens because calories alone cannot properly sustain the body when it lacks essential proteins, fiber, vitamins, and minerals. And this is where many people realize something frightening. The brain begins to desperately crave real food. Fruits, water, protein, anything fresh. It's as if the body finally reaches its limit and starts asking for help. After 7 days of consuming almost exclusively Pringles, your body would probably be more inflamed, more tired, more out of whack, and functioning much worse than on the first day. And the most impressive thing, all of this happened with a food that millions of people eat without a second thought. Because the real problem with ultra-processed foods isn't always immediately apparent in the mirror. But it begins silently inside the body long before that. So, what would actually happen if you ate only Pringles for 7 days? His body would probably survive. But it definitely wouldn't work the way it should. And that's the scariest part. Because at first, everything seems normal. After all, you're still consuming calories. You still feel the taste, the pleasure, and that quick feeling of satiety. But day after day, the body begins to realize that it is receiving energy without real nutrition. And that's where it begins: swelling, fatigue, constant hunger, mental sluggishness, and silent inflammation. What's most striking is that millions of people consume ultra-processed foods like this every day, without realizing how small changes can accumulate inside the body over time. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson from this experiment. Your body is always reacting to what you put into it, even when you don't realize it immediately.